Speaking of retailers, with the countdown to Christmas entering its final day, shoppers are being advised to understand their rights.
The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission says there are minimum standards that retailers must meet. Who knew? Rod Sims is the chairman of the ACCC and joins us now. Rod Sims, good morning and congratulations, it's still in order. It's still a relatively new appointment for you.
It is indeed. I'm still able to say I don't know things.
Well, I didn't know that. So what responsibilities do retailers have to meet?
Look, it's extremely important, this change. Compared to a year ago, consumers now have real rights in terms of the guarantees that they're able to claim on the products they buy. They can get repairs, replacement or refunds. So, for example, if you buy a good that does not meet its specifications, it's faulty, it doesn't do what it says it's going to do, you have a right to get a refund or a replacement good. And there's nothing the retailer can do to contract out of that. You know, those signs that say no refunds,
yes.
They're not legal anymore. You have rights to get refunds if the good doesn't meet reasonable expectations.
Do you have lots of complaints from shoppers along those lines?
It's a fairly new law, so the point is we're trying to make shoppers aware of their rights. So we have had complaints, we are taking actions, but the point of this campaign is to try and let people know of their rights.
So up until now, I just would have ordinarily taken something back
yes.
if it wasn't working. Were there retailers out there telling me that's your problem, love, not mine?
Effectively, prior to a year ago, you had an implied contract. When you bought something, there was an implied contract that you had to enforce.
Yeah.
Now it's written into law, you have statutory guarantees, and the ACCC and the fair trading agencies can help you enforce your rights. So whereas before you could have seen that sign that said no refunds, that would have indicated to you probably you didn't get refunds.
Yeah.
That may have put you off, that may have affected that implied right.
Yes.
Now you have a statutory right, and so that sign is no longer applicable, and you have rights. You can exercise those with the retailer. If that doesn't work, go to your local office of fair trading.
And what sort of stick do authorities have to beat recalcitrant retailers over the head with if they continue to deny shoppers their right?
Well, hopefully the laws are so clear that they will understand what their right, that these rights exist, and so they won't be recalcitrant. But if they are, then there's serious penalties that the courts can apply that didn't exist before a year ago either.
Yep.
So the message here is that compared to a year ago, consumers have got a lot more rights, particularly with these consumer guarantees, and the consumer regulators have a lot more power and a lot more sanctions if retailers don't live up to those rights.
Rod Sims, you've gone right out on the front foot in this position that you've been appointed to in talking about cartels and price fixing. And you've been talking very recently about the need for jail terms to be considered for those who are found guilty or convicted of such crimes. That's tougher language than we've heard before. Why are you talking like this?
Oh, that was in response to a survey that Melbourne University did, the law school there, which is an excellent unit. They did a survey that showed the majority of companies weren't aware that price fixing was against the law and that jail terms applied. Now, price fixing is an awful form of behaviour. It basically transfers money from the community to the person doing it. And so what I was saying was, if people aren't aware of that, it may well take us to find a criminal conviction to make everybody aware of the laws.
So you're very keen to make an example of price fixers?
Look, nobody ever wants to put anybody behind bars, but if that's what it takes to convince companies that this law is real, then that's what we'll have to do. It's only been in the last couple of years that these criminal sanctions have applied. Yeah. So previously you faced a civil court. Now, if you're caught price fixing, it is a criminal offence, and that's a big change.
So in your view, did someone like Dick Pratt get off too lightly?
Oh, look, I don't want to comment on past cases. I wasn't there at the time.
I bet you were watching closely.
Oh, look, watching, but I also had other things to do. So I don't...
Somehow I think he could multitask, but anyway, I'll let that slide.
One of your other hobby horses you expressed it just after taking the position was airport parking fees.
Yes.
And in the broader context, the monopoly every airport operator enjoys. What realistically can you do, and how serious are you about pursuing airport operators for what are seen to be, and justified to be, obscenely expensive car parking fees?
Look, the answer to your question is at the moment we can't do really anything. They're not regulated. And my point is that I'm not a big fan of regulation generally, but where you have a monopoly, it should be regulated. Airports, I think, are monopolies. You can have these debates about whether you can fly to Melbourne or Sydney from overseas, but look, really it's a monopoly. Yep. Yeah. And so our argument is that airports should be forced to provide undertakings to the ACCC that will both help their negotiations with airlines, but also ensure they provide fair access to parking, particularly for others who want to provide alternative services.
So am I right in assuming that...
So we need new powers, I'm sorry.
Yes, and so on that score then, am I right in assuming that even though, of course, all these airports are state-based, it's actually federal law that might need to be changed in order to
Yes.
get that oversight? And if the answer to that is yes, then do you get the sense that the federal government is interested in that?
Well, the Productivity Commission is doing a review of airport regulation at the moment. They've got a draft report out, which I think probably doesn't go, well, in my view, doesn't go far enough.
Yeah.
It's coming up with all sorts of mechanisms to look at the airports, but it's not really giving us effective regulatory powers, which I think we need.
And it's Christmas time, lots of people going to airports, having to take out a second mortgage to park their cars for 4 or 5 hours.
Buy a bottle of water.
You'd have a very strong level of public support for any measure to change this current system.
Well, look, I just think where you have effective monopolies, they need regulation. So if that's the public message as well, that's terrific.
The completion of the NBN is still a long way away, but the rollout continues. Is that a particular issue that you think that your Commission might need to watch very closely when it comes to the pricing of packages that are going to be associated with offering that service?
Look, we'll have a role at 2 levels. The NBN, again, is a monopoly. So we will, during 2012, we'll be working with NBN Co to put in place effective regulation, which is really not there now. It's just rolling out. So there'll be a big focus to regulate it at the wholesale level. Then at the retail level, again, we'll have a big role because the packages of products that get put together will be very confusing for consumers.
Yes.
And so we'll have a role to make sure consumers aren't being misled and are being treated appropriately.
The ACCC still has
So
to
we're working at 2 levels.
formally sign off on the deal between NBN Co and Telstra, which is due to take place early next year. Is that, given all we've seen with shareholder approvals and the like, is that just a mere formality?
Look, it's very close now. It's taken mere formality. I mean, it's taken 4 months of intensive negotiations to get where we've got. We think we've now got an agreement with Telstra that meets the needs of access seekers. It's going out for a final round of consultation, but I'm very confident that at least will get sorted out early in the new year.
Right, Tim, it's good to talk to you this morning. Join us again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.